Hello, this is Coach Tresa, and welcome to session 2 of Taking Charge, your guide to confident aging decisions. In session 1, we heard from Jeff Headley, Managing Director of the Headley Hager Group, and Dr. Mary Mosley, a palliative care physician, and together we had an informative discussion about the health, emotional, and mindset adjustments that are important to consider as you face aging decisions. And today we're joined by Dominic Monk. He's a CFP, certified private wealth advisor, and a certified investment management analyst. Now, the CMIA certification is designed for financial advisors who manage investment needs of affluent clients, and it's recognized as a mark of excellence in the financial services industry. So, equipping professionals like Dominic with advanced knowledge and skills in investment management. So, that's why we're so fortunate to talk to you today, Dominic. Thank you for being here and really welcome. So, you and I are going to explore the financial aspects that our listeners need to consider when facing aging transition decisions, such as moving to assisted living or other levels of long term care. So, you and I will discuss how to make sure this phase of life is financially sustainable. So, to begin, Dominic, we know that every person's financial situation is different. But could you start out by just explaining the importance of carefully evaluating the financial implications of an aging transition, such as moving to assisted living?
Yeah, these conversations are so important. It's a lot of things to conceptualize and put together. Every person's financial situation is unique, but one thing that is universal is aging comes with costs, whether it's expected or unexpected. And the impact of sudden changes could truly derail people's life savings or have these original intentions that they thought of with their funds to be changed, which can really go back to the mental side. So, dealing with the finances is so important because early on, it allows families to get ahead of it. So, you're not hit with a bunch of big tax bombs, or you're able to navigate it as best you can and really thinking through to make sure you're not in a position of forcing sales or forcing things because these when you start to look at taxes, it's never anyone's favorite subject,
Mhm.
but there's so many downstream effects that can really change someone's financial situation. So,
Right.
we always have to keep that in mind.
Absolutely, which is why we're having these discussions so that we can make it a little more accessible for people to actually take a deep breath and step into the conversation. So I imagine that many clients start out their exploration with you believing that they can't really afford a move to assisted living or some kind of other care. So, how do you begin with the insecurity that might be there?
Yeah, first step is just to sympathize with them. I mean, these costs, when you look at it, it feels like a mountain that you're climbing, and it just gets worse by the year. From an average standpoint, Ohio is about 5,500 a month just for assisted living, can go up to 10,000. Look at Florida with a similar figure and kind of all across the nation. And that is so much of an expense. So it's easy to feel that way. So, we are always looking to sympathize with people, listen first, and every situation's different. So really getting that conversation started to see what assets do I have? What do I have going for me? My income sources, and a good way to think about it is it's like you're searching to rent again. It's probably been a long time for most people, but when you're looking at your finances, start with what you know. Your income sources today, your expenses, compare and look at these things to make sure we don't stretch ourselves too far because we never want to put ourselves in a position to stretch our capacity because things could still happen in the future. So start with what you know and let's put it on paper.
For sure, that's such great advice. So what are some of the questions that your clients ask when you're discussing this whole concept of affordability?
Yeah, a lot of times this comes with how much does it cost? I mean, people see so many different variances of what this could look like. A lot of things will get backed into will my retirement income change or will it cover this? How can I afford this? And a lot of times we try to help people stress what happens if you live longer than you expect? Or what if life continues to happen to you and unexpected costs come? Because, hey, a lot of people like to joke that they may pass away at 85, but my job as a protector of your lifestyle is to make sure you get all the way to 100. Whether you want to or not, financially, that's part of the importance here.
Well, I think that's so true because people actually are living longer than their parents, and we do have that tendency to think we're only gonna live as long as our parents did, so having answers and feeling more confident about what you can afford, either a couple or an individual. So it's so helpful in order to begin to even search for the right place. And I know that there's other expenses that you have to consider too, such as, downsizing, moving costs. So are there other aspects of aging transitions that you help your clients with?
Yeah, as best as we can. One of the big ones is Mr. Uncle Sam. And
Mhm.
when you go to make changes, whether it's selling your house or downstream effects of increasing your distributions, Uncle Sam is always there wanting to make sure he has his part. So there are big things, big fancy terms like IRMA, net investment income tax, higher capital gains brackets, all the fancy stuff that we really try to make sure can we smooth out that burden? And that's why the proactive planning really takes place to make sure, hey, Uncle Sam's always going to be there. But let's do our best to smooth out that tax liability because it's a big thing. We've seen people have the aspect where their funds they've saved up this big pile, but when they go to this transition and they need a dollar, every dollar is taxable from an IRA, for example. So really
Mhm.
getting ahead of it and understanding what can be kicked down the road.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah, and of course, the tax consequences of any kind of financial change have to be understood and taken into consideration, but then there's also the estate planning aspect because clients can have their plans in place, but this transition might need to change things. Is that correct?
yeah, I would say so. And my hope is that when people see my face, they think of estate planning because we really do take it serious. I mean, life is hard enough. When something happens, we want to be prepared to have the right people in place to do the right things for us. Because, like I said, life's going to happen. Let's make sure that we're as organized as we can be. So, estate conversations are one of the things that we do talk with people about making sure assets are titled correctly, and really checking off this box so that we have the right people doing the right things for you.
Absolutely. And also getting the family involved to the extent that
Yeah.
people want them to be.
Yes. You have to. I
Mhm.
mean, a lot of times it is the informal communication that really creates good results. You can put things in an estate document, but at the end of the day, really bridging that gap from a communication and sharing as much as you're comfortable doing to allow people to understand what's going on. So it's not such a transition if something were to happen.
Yes, and it's such a gift to give to your family so that they know what your wishes are.
Truly.
So many people have heard that long term care insurance can help with assisted living costs, but they're often kind of confused about what it actually covers and when it kicks in. So, can you kind of walk us through the general idea of long term care insurance and then what people know about timing of their benefits and claims?
Yeah. So long term care insurance can be a powerful tool that's often misunderstood because policies vary. There has been decades of different kinds of policies coming into place. So someone going to use it today could be different than someone who's preparing for it. So when we think about it, these policies are a way to hedge our risk or pay dollars today or in the past to help with this kind of expense. So a lot of times they're generally going to help cover services such as assisted living or home health care if you're still at your home and obviously going up to full nursing, care and skilled nursing. So the biggest point to keep in mind with long-term care benefits is timing is key. With the benefits, we still have to qualify, no matter if we're in our home or at a facility with medical assistance to say we can no longer do 2 out of the 6 ADLs, activities of daily living, to ensure that we can't do that on our own. Just things like bathing, toileting, and kind of those types of things. So one of the biggest things that people tend to forget as part of this is there's something called an elimination period. Let's say you've qualified, you've went through these steps, you've got that medical approval. Well, there's still a period per the policy that they will not pay benefits until after that amount. So, for example, 60 days, after the 60 days, the benefits can start. But remind yourself that these are reimbursement style policies. So, a lot of times you're still paying those benefits and then you get that reimbursement check, let's say a month later. So, you always want to make sure we have that cash ready to go because it's a little bit longer period than a lot of people tend to think.
So it's kind of a cash flow question, isn't it? Where are your assets? If you have a policy such as this, then you kind of stage those payments out to cover the cost of assisted living or long term care. Is that how it works?
Yes, you're correct. Yeah, we have to make sure we qualify. That tends to be the hard work. But once it's turned on, those benefits should pay out to either a stated max amount or unlimited. So a lot of times after you get through that kind of reimbursement schedule, that helps on a monthly cash flow to get that check that gets paid directly to you.
Right, right. So helpful. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the family home. So this is often someone's largest asset, right? So what are the strategic considerations that you discuss with clients about whether to sell their home before they move to assisted living, or maybe they rent it out, or maybe they keep it? So talk to us about that situation.
Yeah, I mean, this comes up practically every time, and it really tends to differ depending on what the family's trying to do and how much assistance you have. So think of you and your family's time as an asset, and think of your mental peace as a potential cost. So consider your ability mentally and physically to handle different scenarios, which is, for example, renting. A lot of people think, hey, well, that's an income source. That's great. But at the end of the day, if you're in a facility or you're needing care, is that something you really want to have in place in making sure you're the landlord taking calls and going through that exercise? Or even, for example, people say, hey, let's use a management company or a family member. Are you going to pay them or are you going to do the 10% cost for a range? Always try to think of it of an apples to apples comparison with assets or income sources versus that house because there is equity. And some people's scenarios may require them to use that and they may be forced to do a sale or something along the lines. But truly think about the financial parts separately than the emotions because it's very easy for that to come up if you've been in that house for decades, for example.
So very true. I think these are excellent aspects of that decision that need to be talked about. And, you mentioned that there's tax consequences such as capital gains, but there's also an aspect that many people don't think about, which is Medicaid planning. So how does that fit into this decision of selling the family home?
Yeah, that one can be really unique. I would say it's going to take time for us together to walk through does it make sense for the family? Because when you look at Medicaid planning, it can help protect those benefits for beneficiaries or the family. You do have to go through a lot of different steps and hurdles to get there, pay attorneys, and you're really making a bet that the person who has the funds, or the person making the transition, is going to outlive the clawback period. So there's some nuances here. It really depends on the situation. So I would say we need to look through all the different variables and make sure we're making a good decision based on that.
Exactly. And as we're discussing here, we find that there is some complexity of different aspects, again, based on a person's individual financial situation, their goals, the kind of facility that they want to move into. But you work with clients in various different income levels, I know. So for someone who realizes that they might need some resources more than they have to afford the quality assisted living or long-term care that they want. So what are some other funding strategies or maybe lesser known options that you help them explore?
Yeah. So I'll give you a few. The first one we've seen is people who are proactive or get ahead of this, even in your 50s or 60s, even 70s in some case, can help put you in a better spot.
Mhm.
So, for example, Roth savings vehicles. A lot of people think of that as a wealth transfer vehicle, which I love that idea. But at the end of the day, that's also a tax buffer. So if we decided to use or create Roth style savings, with things such as Roth conversions. We can spread out that tax liability. So if you go to use funds, we're able to pay for costs and it hopefully be tax free or less of a tax burden to help stretch that out. So we've seen Roth savings be a good vehicle that people can go to. Also, a lot of people tend to carry life insurance with them for a long time, whether they've had it since they were young. A lot of times we're looking more at cash value life insurance policies. This can be a tax buffer. You can borrow against that cash value without it creating taxes. Could impact the death benefit, so we have to keep that in mind. So it really does take some, thought and details around it, but that's also another solution. When we think about putting ourselves in a position, some of those people have seen this, happen to family members. So we've seen a lot of success in people starting early by getting things such as a long-term care policy, a
Mhm,
hybrid, or even a life insurance with a long-term care rider to say, these are not the long-term care policies of the past. You can make sure that if you were no longer to use them, at least you get a life insurance benefit at the end so that you don't feel like your dollars are just getting wasted at that
mhm,
point. We see that helps. So, another solution is a lot of people tend to use their house as an equity asset without selling it
mhm,
for a home equity line of credit to really get through this transition, give you a little bit of time to sell it.
mhm.
So it really kind of helps us go through there. And obviously, I could talk all day about this stuff, but it really depends on the person's situation.
Well, it's good to know that there are a lot more options available. And, this is again why we're talking to everyone listening is just to get into the conversation so that you can educate yourself and understand what your options are. So, as we wrap up, and what would you say, Dominic, to someone watching the video who just feels so overwhelmed by this financial complexity? How do you invite them to the conversation?
Yeah. No, I sympathize with these people. I mean, we see it and we want to do our best to help these people. These kinds of things have so many variables. It's too hard to mentally try to tackle this. Make it more manageable by taking it one step at a time, break it out into smaller pieces and put it on paper. Let's look at this together because small steps can add up to give us more flexibility and financial comfort. Because a lot of times when people are going through this, they're mixing the mental side of it and the finances.
Mhm.
Let's break them down and take it one step at a time and really work through this together to deal with those separately.
Exactly. I love what you said. Get it on paper and separate the 2 things that are going on. You have the financial numbers, and then you have the mental and emotional issues, which your team is ready and able to talk about both. So, one thing that you could recommend for a listener who's here with us to just get started, just what's the first step to get their financial house in order?
Yeah. Just gather your financials into one place. A lot of people tend to be scattered out. We really believe in getting things into one view because that's the best way to think about everything you have going on and what you're looking for. So at the end of the day, you don't have to do this alone. Make sure you can work with us as your trusted advisor and consultant to look at all these things you have going on. And it's really important for you to share with us what you have and getting it all into one view. It's super helpful.
Well, of course, we have so many more tools now than we used to have in the financial industry and clients too for organizing their finances and knowing where everything is. So it's definitely worth the time, especially when you consider this kind of transition.
Truly.
So, is there anything else that you'd like to say, Dominic, before we say thank you?
Yeah, I would just say start the process now. Doesn't matter if you're in your 40s, your 50s, or even if you feel like it's too late in your 70s. There are different steps, and we can walk through the different solutions with you because truly it is different depending on your situation. That's our favorite part of our job at the end of the day is to make this mean something. We're investing for a reason, and we've traded our money for our time and resources. So let's use those to help us get that back and really create mental clarity as well as financial clarity.
Absolutely. And I know that your clients are in good hands, Dominic. So thank you so much for sharing this information with us today. And thank you, listeners, for joining us for both sessions of Taking Charge, your guide to confident aging decisions. And together, these two sessions, we covered a lot of ground from shifting your mindset about aging transitions to taking the action to create a solid financial foundation. Now, in session one, Dr. Mosley and Jeff helped us understand that planning for assisted living isn't about giving up or admitting defeat. It's about making empowered choices while you still have the clarity and strength to do so. And the research is clear. People who are proactive and create a sustainability plan often live longer, healthier, and more connected lives than those who wait for a crisis to force their hand. Today, Dominic showed us that the financial side of this transition, while complex, is absolutely manageable with the right professional guidance. Whether it's understanding your true affordability, maximizing your existing assets, or exploring creative funding solutions, there are pathways to make quality assisted living financially sustainable. So, the most important takeaway from both sessions is this: you have more control over this process than you might think. By addressing both the emotional and the financial aspects of aging before you're in crisis mode, you're not just planning for care, you're planning for continued independence, dignity, and peace of mind. Your future self will thank you for the courage you took to plan ahead. And your family will be grateful that you took control. Well, you could make these decisions from a position of strength rather than urgency. So, this is Coach Tresa, and thank you so much for watching. We hope these videos have empowered you to make confident, informed decisions about the years ahead.